Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I have a video for you that is going through explaining the rose scent that is used in so many of my favourite perfumes and perfumes that I review here on my channel. And this was a suggestion from someone in the comments, and I thought it was a great suggestion because often when you're reading about perfumes it mentions a Turkish rose or a Moroccan rose or TAIF rose, and it's not obvious to any of us like what that means, what the difference is between them. So I'm going to take you through the whole like rose story of how rose gets into perfumes and the difference between the different types. If you're new here, then hello, welcome. We are all about perfume. I have hundreds and hundreds of videos going through whole ranges, reviewing new releases, so do check them out, as well as my blog where I have detailed articles going through a whole different ranges and types of perfumes. And if you're a regular viewer, do check to see if you're subscribed and give the video a thumbs up if you find it useful, helpful. It really helps me. And of course, down below in the description box, I'll link to where you can buy the perfumes I talk about, and also link to where you can get Empress, my perfume, which has rose in it, and that'll be coming out later this year. Cool, so I think rose is definitely one of the most common scents that's used in fragrances, rose oil. You know, you find it in men's fragrances as well as women's, and it can take so many different forms. It can be lemony, it can be sweet, it can be almost spicy, woody, so earthy. It can be just so many things. So the most important thing to know when it comes to the rose that's in your perfume is that there are two main types of rose that are used in perfumery. There's obviously hundreds of types of rose that can grow in your garden, but when it comes to ones that are actually used in perfumery, there's only two. And I know a lot of the modern hybrids that have been created often don't even have any scent. Like you'll see roses in gardens that literally have no scent, but there's two. So those two are, first of all, the Damask rose, which is also sometimes known as Turkish rose, Bulgarian rose, Moroccan rose, and TAIF rose. They all mean the same thing. They're all Damask rose. And I'm going to explain why it has those different names. Okay, and then the second type is called the May rose, which is also called Rose centifolia. So if we start with that one, the May rose, this is the rose that's predominantly grown in Grasse in south of France. So you see a lot of imagery on Dior, Chanel websites of grass and the roses there. Those are all May roses. The name centifolia is Latin, and it means in Latin 100 leaves, and it's in reference to the fact that the rose flower has so many petals in a May rose. And I think particularly in the 19th and into the 20th century, huge amounts of it were grown in Grasse. I believe in the mid 20th century, there were 700 hectares of Grasse which were just dedicated to growing rose. And this is around the time that Chanel No. 5 was launched, of course, and that uses the May rose from Grasse in the south of France. So Chanel No. 5 is an example of a very successful May rose fragrance. Now a lot less land is used, about a fifth of that in Grasse is used for May rose growing. The reason for that is it's quite a fragile rose, quite difficult to grow and harvest. So when it comes to producing things in large quantities, it has a relatively low yield compared to the Damask rose. And the reason why it's called May rose is because it only flowers once a year, and that's in May. So you can only pick it and get the scent in May. And it literally needs to be harvested on the day that it blooms. So it's not all of May, it's just the day when each particular rose decides to bloom. That's when it has to be harvested and you get the scent. So the May rose can have a more leathery undertone, slightly animalistic, earthy undertone. It's more of a honeyed floral. It's more of a sort of deeper rose. And I think a great example of the difference between the May rose and the Damask rose is in the Miss Dior range, which is like the whole Miss Dior range is all about roses. The Absolutely Blooming, which is the Eau de Parfum, the heaviest one in the range, this uses May rose. Whereas Blooming Bouquet, which is lighter, cleaner, fresher, this uses the damask rose. So that's a really good example of the difference between the May rose and the damask rose. Heavier for the May rose, a little bit more like sensual, deeper, and then the damask rose is lighter, sweeter. The May rose only starts flowering 2 years after it's planted, and in the 3rd year is when it's fully blooming. The picking is done by hand for all roses. So the pickers get up at dawn when the rose is blooming and flowering, because during the day with the heat of the sun, it starts to lose its scent, and they try and pick all the flowers that have bloomed before about 9 o'clock in the morning. They collect them in these big brown jute bags, which you might have seen in some of the Miss Dior Rose and Roses advertising. And the reason why they use that material jute is because it allows them to breathe. It doesn't like squish the scent, gives them space as well. And someone harvesting the May rose would pick about 5 kilograms in one morning. So your best examples of May rose are the classic Chanel No. 5, absolutely blooming Miss Dior, also Jo Malone's Red Roses, which is like a heavier rose. So now we move on to the damask rose, or rose Damascus. So contrary to the name Damascus, they don't originate in Damascus in Syria. It's believed to actually have originated in India, and then it was brought from India through to Persia, Middle East, and into Europe in the 13th century. So really ancient story behind the Damascus rose. I believe the Crusades from Europe really helped bring it over, basically where like loads of European people went into the Middle East and robbed loads of stuff and brought it back and killed lots of people. So rose came with them back. And then it was really cultivated during the Ottoman Empire in the 17th century, and really spread throughout Bulgaria, and really cultivated in Bulgaria in particular. I just went to Bulgaria a few months ago actually. So you can check out my video of Bulgaria on my Soki Travels site. Beautiful country. And then in Bulgaria, nicknamed the Valley of the Roses. And that area is a major producer of rose. They even have a rose museum. And also in Turkey, in Kazanlak, they also produce a lot of the damask rose as well. So that's where you're getting the names Turkish rose, Bulgarian rose, because that might be where it's grown. So the scent is more flowery and sweet than your May rose. It's very feminine. It's used in a lot of makeup products, cosmetics, as well as perfumery, because it has slightly powdery and very feminine feel to it. And then the soil that it's grown in affects the smell, and it can be more like lemony or more fruity, you know, depending on the soil. So it's grown a lot in Morocco, which is where you get the name Moroccan rose. And the soil in Morocco make the smell very fresh, very uplifting. And Morocco also has a Valley of the Roses. And every year, sort of April to May, the main growing and picking season, it produces 3,000 to 4,000 tons of wild rose. And then the rose that's grown in Bulgaria tends to flower a bit darker there. It's a darker colour, and the scent is a bit more jammier, maybe a little bit more sweeter. So you're often going to get the Bulgarian rose used in more gourmand scents, more sweeter scents. It's quite rich. The soil means that it has a lot of different elements to the scent that can be brought out or faded out. And the valley there in Bulgaria is surrounded by mountains which protect it. And they also get a huge amount of rain there as well, which really helps. So Miss Dior Blooming Bouquet is a great example of the damask rose. Also Lancôme Idole, which is a very fresh rose. I love this as a really fresh rose option. And my Burberry as well from Burberry is a good fresh damask rose. So once you've got the rose petals, what do you do with them? Well, there are two different methods to get the scent out of them. You either use steam distillation, which is the kind of thing you'd use if you were making rose water at home, or in more industrial scale, you'll use a solvent extraction. So the steam distillation requires 3 to 5 tons of rose petals to create 1 kilogram of rose oil. And the rose oil that's created is very fresh, and they're steamed, and the essential oil comes out through the vapor. It's collected in water, and then because it's a different, you know, viscosity, I guess, to the water, it's easily separated out, and there you get the rose oil. For the solvent method, it's much more efficient. You only need 400 kilograms of petals to get 1 kilogram of oil, which works out that a 30 ml bottle of Chanel No. 5 contains about 12 roses. So the roses are stacked up inside a giant vat. It's very unglamorous. And then they're bathed in this solvent, this chemical, and heated. They lose their pink color and become mushy and brown. So it's less romantic. And that actually produces a fragrant wax at the bottom, which is known as rose concentrate. And then that is mixed with alcohol to create rose absolute, which is then the ingredient that the perfumer will use to create the perfume. And the whole process takes around 3 days. So yeah, guys, I hope that helps sort of demystify the rose fragrance world. Let me know whether you think you're a fan of the more damask rose or the TAIF rose. Let me know, or do you grow any of them in your garden? Let me know which you prefer. But yeah, let me know if you found that helpful, and if you want any other videos on a similar vein. I could maybe do like tuberose, or yeah, let me know what you think. But that's it, guys. So thank you so much for watching, as always, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.